So, welcome to the very first Union Matters podcast. We're with Marianne Pizzitola, the president of NYC Retirees, who have been so good to us over the last few years. If you have real Medicare like I do, you should appreciate what she does. One of the reasons why you got involved with all this, I think, is because our unions make deals without consulting us. Would you agree to that?
I would.
Yeah, and it's disturbing to me because you're not UFT. I really don't know how DC 37 treats you, but we get a lot of top-down back talk from Michael Mulgrew and his people. Like he calls us names and says we spout fairy tales and conspiracy theories, and that upsets me because I don't think it's true. One of the things Michael Mulgrew told us is that Medicare Advantage, his Medicare Advantage, is just as good as what I'll call real Medicare, which is traditional Medicare with a Medigap plan. What would you say about that, Marianne?
Well, well, I think Michael's trying to take ownership that the program he created, because he created it or customized it, makes it great. But it's not, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that any program that's not traditional Medicare or that's privatized Medicare or an alternative to Medicare or managed care is not traditional Medicare. And that tells me that they don't know what Medicare is, why it was founded, what was the importance, and that it was one of the greatest civil rights achievements in healthcare ever. There was a reason why Medicare became Medicare.
But Aetna, Aetna is a big country with a storied history. They sold slave insurance back. They've been around for a long time. Why would you doubt a fine sterling company like Aetna?
A for-profit, privatized insurance company who puts profits over people, who focuses more on shareholders. In the last 3 shareholder meetings, they actually had a phrase that it was margins over members, which means profits over people. And they said
They
it
they said it out loud.
out loud.
I,
Yeah, we
I'm a little
reported those.
surprised. I'm a little surprised.
I'm not.
Well, now there's a deal coming with our pension fund. There is legislation that would affect your union and my union or former union. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand it very well. I read an article about it and I've written about it, but our unions made this deal, and I don't recall them consulting us about it. Do you recall being consulted about this?
No, but
Well,
we're
okay.
retired. They should have left our benefits alone, healthcare, pension, whatever. But this is not. This is one of those things. I think it's confusing to a lot of people. I read the same articles I believe you did, and the same conversations that we've been having with other pension experts. We know that there's a lot of ways. Look, pension money is sitting in an account, and it's earning interest, and
Mhm.
you want to see pensions funded. You want to see pensions fully funded because the
Mhm.
more people that are collecting pensions, the higher the liability is. And that the state constitution requires the city and the state to fund, and the members to make sure those pensions are funded. That is a legal obligation. So we have to make sure that there's money going into them. It's not a rainy day fund or a slush fund. It's not supposed to be used in that way, and unfortunately sometimes it was. But there should be protections, and that's why you have watchdogs. Healthcare, well, you kind of had the stabilization fund to pay the under 65 healthcare plan, and you also had the stabilization fund was to pay for active worker healthcare. And we all see how that was handled, right? So there was no,
Mayor Adams says it's depleted, it's broke, and he
yes,
blames the UFT,
yes, he
my
does.
union.
Yeah, that, yes, he does. But that's another situation in which this was a fund meant to finance premium for healthcare for active workers and under 65 retirees. And that fund, of course, we say got raided or misused, whichever description, adjective you'd like to use. This is the same thing with pensions. So when we looked at that article, and then I saw the minutes this morning from your executive board.
Tom Brown, yes, the UFT assistant treasurer and a TRS trustee, he says there is bad information out there,
Yes.
and that they're just smoothing out estimates. They're smoothing out estimates. Do you understand that, smoothing out estimates? Because I don't understand it at all.
I guess he's trying to say it's leveling off the payments, but if you look at the amortization schedule that was in the article and in the bill, that's not smoothing anything out. And when we went back and looked at some of the context, it's the TRS is not overfunded. It's roughly 85% funded, as is NYSERS. They're finally at a point where they're more funded than they had been in history, but that creates a safety net. You want the pensions funded that way that it's not a high burden on the members of the pension system or the taxpayers. So, and the state, of course, or the city, because they have to make sure that is funded. But that is a really important thing to understand. You're going to drop the city's liability at a point, and then come 2033, it jacks right back up. And from 33 to 44, they have to pay that back. Now, by that point, Henry Garrido will be gone, Michael Mulgrew will be gone, the mayor will be gone, the governor will be gone, and this is probably going to be, potentially could be a nightmare for somebody else. Connecticut did something very similar to this in 1995, and it didn't really work out very well for them. So that's an issue you have to stay cognizant of. Whenever someone is looking to take something that is funding, like if we always said if healthcare was funded the way pensions were, we wouldn't be in this mess and that we're in now. But unfortunately, people keep using these safety net funds like piggy banks, and they shouldn't be used that way.
Well, Tom says we're getting bad information.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, since he thinks we're getting bad information, why didn't he give us the good information, before this just came out and surprised us?
Did you ask Tom that?
Well, I like Tom. Tom's a good guy.
I'm
He
sure he
speaks
is.
Spanish. Hola, Tom, ¿cómo estás? He's a good guy.
I'm sure.
But nonetheless, I'm confused. Good guy, whatever. I'm retired, but I'm technically a UFT member. However, you're not technically a DC 37 member, I believe. This is a UFT thing.
Well, you're not
but
really a union member either. I hate to tell you that. You are a member of your UFT RTC chapter.
You're breaking my heart.
I'm so sorry.
You're shattering my bubble.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You are a retired member, and I could reliably say that because the UFT doesn't consider a retired person a whole person. One, because you're not in the union because you're not in their collective bargaining unit. You're not covered by their contract. You're not covered under the state Taylor law. You're not covered under New York City collective bargaining law. You are a loyalty member as part of their retired chapter, which is subordinate to your union. So if you want to call that a union member, okay, I'll let you squeak that by. But even with the voting that is authorized to your retirees, if you were a full-fledged member, you'd be covered under the contract, and every single retiree would be allowed to vote.
Yeah, but this notwithstanding,
Yes.
forgive my dog. He's crazier than I am a little bit. He's having fun. This notwithstanding, your union president or whatever, Henry Garrido and Michael Mulgrew, they insist that they have the right to negotiate for us, to collectively bargain for us, and that's why they resist, for example, Intro 1096, which would protect our right to Medicare. Why do they say that?
Arthur.
Well, you can't speak for them.
Well, what I can tell you is, well, I can't tell you why they're saying that. I surmise it is because they were trying to get away with taking something from people not in their union to finance their objectives. There's really no other way to say that. I'm not in a union. Henry Garrido is my former parent union, my local. I have a local, which is a subordinate local to the parent union. They are former union to me. I am not a union member. I am retired. I take the benefits that I earned when I was employed into retirement. Those are the promises that were made to us, and that should have been protected. Because if you look at every single contract of every single union, in Article 1, it tells you who that union represents, and you nor I are in that contract.
Okay, I'm gonna read this question because it's a little long, so forgive me.
Go ahead.
I just read a book about interviews that said never read, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Go ahead.
Let's look at this deal. If indeed they free up more money, there are several ways it could be used. The writer of the article I cited in my Substack, his name is E.J. McMahon, he suggests it will be used for salary increases. Now, in fairness, he's part of the Manhattan Institute, not precisely the best friends of city workers.
Right.
But this notwithstanding, do you think it's a reasonable assumption that this would be used for salary increases?
I quite honestly don't know what they'll be used for, since
Okay.
the people that encouraged the governor to draft this bill did not share any of that information.
Okay, that's a good answer because I don't actually think it will be used for salary increases. But even if that were true, I wonder why retirees who don't benefit from collective bargaining should be funding salary increases, which I believe we've done before. We spoke a little bit about Medicare, and I do believe that we were kind of thrown out there. And, Michael Mulgrew, I believe he and Unity originated this idea to save $600 million a year forever for the city in exchange for a 3-year contract. I mean, that's a spectacular deal. You give us 3 years at a round cost of living, and we'll give you $600 million a year forever. This is like Michael Bloomberg's wet dream. And I believe even the original idea stems from Michael Bloomberg.
It does.
Yep, Michael Bloomberg, my favorite politician of all time, except, just about everybody else. Just about everybody else. So in any case, let me speculate on some other things it may be. It could be they're doing this to meet that $600 million a year. Possibly Michael and Henry will come up and say, we saved you. See, we made this deal, and now you can keep your Medicare, and we'll pay the $600 million a year that we promised without taking Medicare away from you. And then they would be big heroes, no?
I don't necessarily know about that.
Okay, I don't think they would be big heroes either because they're the people who created this mess.
Yes.
Another thing that this money could be used for would be Tier 6 improvements. Perhaps instead of waiting until you're 112 to retire, you can retire at 55. That would appeal to a lot of people, It's election time, and Michael Mulgrew says there are a lot of shenanigans during election time. That could be one of them. Or this could fund the bonus for UFT paras. I don't know if you know, but during contract negotiations, Michael Mulgrew had $450 million to play with. He could have given paras a raise
Yes, he could have.
as opposed to a tip, but he opted not to. So this is like a grab bag of goodies for the union bosses to play with, especially if they're up for re-election. Now, we worry about the risks of a buy now, pay later plan. I think I spoke to you and you said it was like taking equity out of your house and you have to pay it back later. But aren't our pensions protected by the New York State Constitution?
Well, the New York State Constitution protects your pension from being diminished. So this is where it's critical that no matter what happens, the city and the state have to fund your pension. It cannot be diminished. If there's no money, it's gonna come from somewhere. So that might be reduced wages. You're not going to get the increases that you want or the retro that you wanted. It's got to come from somewhere. And if the city doesn't have the money to pay for that, it has to find it because it is a requirement that your pension must be paid.
So even if they do pay us and those who come after us, somebody could be truly hurt by this.
Somebody, yes.
And they can always change the Constitution. I mean,
They've tried to do that many times.
Constitution is not the Ten Commandments, though we may believe otherwise. Would you agree that they lied to us about Medicare Advantage?
I would.
Yeah, I would too. So that makes it difficult for me to trust them. And I think that it's, once somebody lies to you, you kind of get an idea who they are. Okay, I want to ask you one more thing today. Could you tell us the story that the court heard that persuaded the court that Medicare Advantage would cause irreparable harm to retirees? I think you know it better than I do, and I've never actually heard you tell the full thing, so I'd appreciate it if you could.
So as part of our research, we were looking into how prior authorization impacts people. And we knew of several circumstances, like there's the case of Gary Bent, who was on a United Healthcare Medicare Advantage plan, auto-enrolled by the state of Connecticut, who died after his doctor wanted him put into rehab, and the Medicare Advantage plan prior authorization denied him multiple times, and he ended up dying. Wow. The case that we cited in our brief was specifically to Aetna, because that's who we were fighting at the time. And the case had to do with Arana Cunningham, who had a very specific cancer. And Aetna, Medicare Advantage, prior authorization, denied her cancer treatment. And in order for her family to try to save her life, they liquidated all of their assets. They sold their house, they sold everything, and trying to raise the money for her to get her cancer treatment. By the time that happened, it was too late, and Arana died. And the family sued after she passed, and a judge awarded the family $25 million. And the judge told Aetna, fix the ways you're conducting your practice, because you literally cost this woman her life. She would have had potentially a better outcome had you not denied her access to the care that her doctor was seeking. So knowing what the judge said in the Cunningham case, we repeated that in our brief and in oral argument. And so the judge said, after my attorney had described this to the judge of what happened to her, the Aetna lawyer said, well, Your Honor, the plaintiff's attorney, that was us, plaintiff's lawyer only mentions one example of someone who died as a result of prior authorization. It's not a big deal. It's a business decision. And so you understand, this was the very first time retirees were in court in person, because we've been in COVID. And all these other court hearings or whatever was literally on Zoom, okay? So the very first time, we overfill that courtroom. There's retirees side. They had to move the courtroom from upstairs to downstairs to a larger courtroom and bring in chairs because of all the seniors that had come. And there was even people couldn't get in the room. So when the attorney said this, you could hear it was an audible gasp. Everyone was like, because how could you say, like, literally dismiss, well, it was only one person that they mentioned that died. Like it was a nothing. And
Yeah.
so the judge was sitting there like this listening. And when the Aetna lawyer said that, his face like cringed. And while I'm listening to the gasp, I was like, I think that clinched it. And so the judge looks at the lawyer from Aetna and says, well, sir, if to this court, if one person dies because of a business decision made by Aetna, that's one person too many.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I remember when the city council was trying to change 12-126 to lower the standard of care that we would receive.
Right.
I recall that the UFT sent 4 representatives there. I believe there were 4, 2 former UFT vice presidents and 1 cancer survivor and 1 other Unity member or
I think
something.
there were 5 at that table. If I
Okay.
think who you're talking about.
Well, I was close, 4 or 5. But their argument was that we need the option of
Of choice.
the choice of real Medicare, and they bring out a cancer survivor, and I'm a cancer survivor, so I was really shocked by that because I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy. I mean, it was a really bad experience, but anybody can get cancer, and it seems to me that if they need it, everybody needs it. Absolutely everybody needs it. You need it. I need it. My dog needs it. My dogs have insurance, by the way, I will say. I hope they don't get cancer. But yeah, we all need it. And not all of us could afford what they were proposing. I think it was about $200 per month per person. That would be about $5,000 out of my pension for my wife and I. And I mean, I might be able to swing it, but that's $5,000 less than I expect from my pension. And if I were working for DC 37, or if I were a UFT paraprofessional, even if I were a UFT paraprofessional plus the $10,000 they may magically receive sometime, which they won't be getting in retirement.
And not pensionable either.
Correct.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm really shocked by that our union leaders who are paid to represent us can be so callous.
Well, and that was what was more disappointing to me about Henry and the leadership of the locals in District Council 37, more so than your union leader, because we have a greater number, but there are also teachers that make $15,000, $10,000 pensions. There are. It's not a lot of them, but there are still people that don't make what teachers make today. DC 37, 2/3 of them make under $35,000 and 1/3 of them make under 12. So even your top paid cops and firefighters, who were at the time your highest paid civil servants in the city of New York in 1979, 1980, their top pay was $15,000 then. So if you take a 50% pension over time with cost of living adjustments, which are just 1 to 3% of the first $18,000 of your pension, and that's if you make an $18,000 pension. Like this year, we got a 1.8% increase, which is $324 for the year. With all the co-pays that they just sacked us with, some people will be burning through that like by the month of February.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not a cost of living adjustment. And those co-pays and deductibles are a backdoor premium. They can keep saying that we're still providing you with quality health care, premium free. Well, okay, you're not charging me a premium up front, but you're backdooring that premium in the form of a copay and a deductible. Because we've watched through the litigation, we have documents that we were given that showed that when they went to implement the copays for the first time in 22, the premium dropped. And when the judge entered the injunction, the very next year, the premiums went back up. It is a direct correlation. And then, of course, we were given sheets by some of the other city people that showed all of the savings that they'd been negotiating to try to save money, and they'll just keep going. As if they put this copay on, increase this copay from $50 to $100 to $150, what the savings would be that they can use towards whatever agreement that they want. That's a backdoor premium.
And I feel like they're treating us like we're Pavlov's dog, okay, it's $100 to go to the urgent care, so just don't go to the urgent care. I've been to a few urgent cares since I retired and have been on Medicare, and the bills I get, which are paid by Medicare and by senior care, are about $100. So I think that if you're going to an urgent care and you're in service, you're paying the whole thing.
Right.
And I also think that in-service members, I don't know about DC 37, but in-service members might feel like, the retirees only have to pay $15 to go here, to go there, and it's a big nothing, and they're whining about it. But UFT, I pay $300 a month for prescription insurance for my wife and I. That's $3,600 a year. I get back $900 for me. I get nothing for my wife. So what is that? I'm paying, I don't know, $2,600 a year. And that's before I even take a dollar out to pay the $15. So I believe I'm paying out a lot more now than I was when I was in service. And that doesn't even mention that our drug plan means you pay 25% of the cost of a drug, which can really add up. This year it can go up to $2,000. I think it used to be $8,000. So I mean, I could be in the hole easily for $6,500 between my wife and I, just paying for prescriptions, and that's before I pay the $15. So it's more, I think, than my in-service brothers and sisters might think it is.
And dependent upon your income, because my pension is a $35,000 pension, and you've always heard me say I make a lot more than some of my other retirees do.
Mm-hmm.
They would never be able to afford that. They would be forced onto whatever the union leaders that were making these decisions planned, that managed care plan and HMO, whatever the heck it was, MA, because they couldn't. And some of them, like even DC 37, this is what was most disturbing to me, is many retirees who are low income, who are also due eligible Medicare and Medicaid, they would not, some of them even just forego Medicare because they can't afford to wait for the Medicare B reimbursement that doesn't come until like 16 to 22 months later from the city. So they just go straight Medicaid.
Well, I mean, if they can do that, Medicaid is a little bit in danger right now. I'm really concerned about people who have to go to
Yeah.
Medicaid.
But this is what I'm saying, is that they don't recognize who we are. They don't recognize the population. This is why retirees are not in unions. The courts found in 1971 that retirees cannot be in a union because their needs are materially different.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a prime example of that they could take benefits from a retired person who's not in the union, who they are not legally able to collectively bargain for, but since you have something that they feel that they can take from
Negotiate, take away.
negotiate away from you,
Yes.
to benefit an active dues-paying member, they will. Where they had a moral obligation to protect what you earned and paid for due to all of the years that you were a loyal dues-paying member.
So I think we're arriving at the same conclusion here, you and I, that Michael and Henry should keep their paws off of us.
Yes, they should.
Keep their hands off of our benefits, not gamble with our pensions, not gamble with the pensions of those who follow us, because I think we have a little bit of responsibility to protect those who come after us.
Yes, because remember, we built their union. We built the city. After 9/11, we rebuilt this city. Mm-hmm. They have what they have today because of what we did. and they have to respect that.
So let's close on that note. I want to thank you so much, Marianne, for meeting with me.
You're welcome.
And be well. And I hope we win all those lawsuits that you're involved in.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being part of the movement.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.